Alert, London on edge. At least one person dead, nearly a dozen others injured after a van slams into a crowd of people in front of a mosque in London.
Was a terrorist, tell him.
Of course it's a terrorist attack.
He's a terrorist, yeah?
It's a terrorist attack.
He wasn't ill, no?
No, he was not ill.
And he was not drunk. He was a white terrorist.
He was on the floor about 5 minutes. People was holding him. If someone is drunk, you cannot hold him for 5 minutes on the floor.
Attack.
All right, well, we have just learned about the man behind the wheel and his possible motive. We are live in London with the very latest. And good morning to you. You are watching an early edition of Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning. I'm Rob Schmidt.
And I'm Heather Childers. Straight to that Fox News alert for you. London's mayor condemning the latest bloodbath as a, quote, horrific terrorist attack.
Yeah, police say a man used that van to mow down a crowd of worshippers leaving a mosque, killing one, injuring 10 others. The 48-year-old suspect arrested and being questioned right now.
Benjamin Hall is on the scene for us in London with the hunt for possibly more accomplices, and he joins us now on the phone with more. Benjamin, are you there?
Yeah, hi, good morning, Heather and Rob. Unfortunately, this whole area is now being shut down. The police presence is incredibly high, and so are tensions. This was yet another attack in London, but of course, as you've been saying, what stands out this one is that it was carried out by a white man on Muslims, using the very same method that we have seen in previous attacks, the use of a truck to mow people down. It's now been called a terrorist attack here, and it's been investigated by counter-terrorism police. It happened just after midnight near a Muslim centre in North London, killing one and injuring almost a dozen. And it happened at a time when the multi-ethnic neighbourhood here was crowded with Muslims leaving the local centre after Ramadan prayers. The driver revving his engine and driving at speed into the crowds, off the road and onto the pavement. Muslim leaders have called it a hate crime, and they are urging the public here to stay calm. Police have now arrested the driver, a 48-year-old man. He was pinned to the ground by two bystanders until the police could arrive. The two men are being called heroes. Eyewitnesses have also reported that while he was being held by the public, the man said a number of times, "I've done my bit, and I want to kill Muslims."
Was a terrorist, tell him.
Of course it's a terrorist attack.
He's a terrorist, yeah?
It's a terrorist attack.
He wasn't ill, no?
No, he was not ill. And he was not drunk.
He was a white terrorist.
He was on the floor about 5 minutes. People was holding him. If someone is drunk, you cannot hold him for 5 minutes on the floor.
Attack.
Eyewitnesses also reported that two other men in the van ran away after the attack, and now the search is on for possible accomplices. London police closed the area to normal traffic. A helicopter continues to circle all overhead, and a large cordon has been established to keep motorists and pedestrians away. Now, while some community leaders are pointing out that this is an attack on Muslims, many others saying that this was an attack on shared values and on this community. Back to you guys.
Benjamin Hall, thank you so much, Benjamin. We appreciate you joining us. And here to react with us now is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, a former U.S. Navy commander and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. He joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's good to be with you.
I first want to ask you what you know about this particular mosque. Can you give us a little bit about the background?
Well, this mosque actually in 2002 was the home to Hamza and a number of radicals. It was actually shut down by the government, but then had a new leadership and had a renewed sense of being a part of British society, and has since, while there are some questions of some ideological issues, has no longer been that center of terrorism, if you will. And at the end of the day, though, barely a few hours since the incident, the bottom line is that there is no justification, there is no sense. This radical act, if you will, is trying to rip us apart. It's exactly what ISIS wants. There are some mosques that might have ideological issues, but the way to treat that is the antiseptic of sunlight. We need tough love for our Muslim community. The head of the sword, if you will, against the radicals is religious freedom. And the day the radicals of either side try to stop the religious freedom, the practice, this was a planned attack. The mosques during Ramadan were in the evening, we're reading our scripture, our Quran, coming closer to God. The time in which the evening Taraweeh prayers end varies from mosque to mosque. And this man or radical that did this, this act of hate, if that's what it turns out to be, planned it, knew what time they would come out of that particular mosque. So this is an attack against all of the West. And if we're going to join together as a society to defeat the global ideology of jihad, our Muslim community is going to be at the head of trying to fix that problem.
Yeah, that certainly is something the president here in the United States talked about, that Muslims need to be at the forefront of this. As we start to see what appears to be a motive come together here and in a city that's seen so much violence and tragedy in the last couple of months, what does this do to the relationship that's already somewhat strained there between Muslims living in London and others?
Well, it depends on what we do with this another act and how we respond, how our Muslim community does, how the leadership in London and in the West does. If we allow this sort of Hammurabi's law of an eye for an eye to rip us apart and lose our own rule of law, then it will be a success for ISIS. If we allow it to bring us together and steel our resolve to come together in religious freedom and liberty, and bring our communities out of that separationism and demand that they begin to assimilate and fight the theocratic ideas that are the underbelly of radical Islam, then we will learn from this. But I think today, as these loved ones are riling from this personal time of spirituality in Ramadan, we realize that there are things happening in the West that is not just collateral damage. If we're going to win this, there are things we can do against the ideologies that create radicals that you just can't do in Saudi Arabia or Syria. So we can't minimize rather the role of Muslims in Britain and in America to defeat these ideologies.
And while we're still trying to find out additional information about the attacker, we do know that he is alive, and so he will be talking. We will find out if there are other accomplices and his motives for this attack. But as you said earlier, this is something that ISIS would actually want to happen because it aids them in their cause.
Absolutely. As ISIS is seeing the brunt of our military attacks in Syria and Iraq, the reason they attack in Nice and in London and in San Bernardino is they want to break the resolve of America and the West to defeat them in the Middle East, but they also want to grow the jihadist recruitment, if you will. And the primary way to fuel jihadist recruitment is to further separate them out even more than the imams and the militants, and rather the Islamists do in the West. So what they do is try to roil chaos in society, which is what terrorism is, and by doing that, create this vigilante response that can happen, and that feeds exactly into the playbook of ISIS and why they do these attacks to start with.
And as the president said when he was in Saudi Arabia, Muslims have taken the brunt of the anger from ISIS. They have had much more losses by ISIS and more killings than any other group of people in the world. Talk about that for a second.
They really have. And, you know, Islam is in that time in history right now that many of the Western religions went through in Enlightenment and Reformation, and right now, a little over 1,438 years old, the religion is going through a battle against theocracy. So inside Baghdad, inside Syria and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, you see attacks where, in Baghdad just last week, Muslims at midnight were eating ice cream at an ice cream parlor and were bombed. In Kabul and in Afghanistan, we saw bombs after bombs with hundreds being killed. These are Muslims that are trying to create democratic, secular societies, while the Islamists are trying to prevent that. Indonesia, which was thought to be a more moderate Islamic democracy, now is seeing its only Christian governor in prison for blasphemy laws and attacks on the streets by Islamists as it starts to slide down more into theocracy away from its democracy. So this is a global battle, and I hope as Londoners are waking up today, and as we are in the West looking at trying to figure out what do we do next, we start to realize that we can do things to combat the underbelly of nonviolent ideology of political Islam that you just can't do in Baghdad and Syria and Muslim-majority countries.
All right, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, thank you so much.
Very well said. Thank you, Doctor.
We'll talk to you again.
Yeah.